Hi, my name is Cynthia. Welcome to my mirror scrying session utilizing my obsidian mirror. It's a real honor to be here, and I am just wanting to get us set up here for the last quarter moon ahead of the total solar eclipse in Aries. And like I suspected, there are themes carrying through from the full moon eclipse in Libra. Just like is wont to happen when there are, during eclipse season, there are energetic themes that carry through until it's over. And we're right in the heart of that. And speaking of hearts, heart was one of the biggest themes to come through the gaze today. So like what I've been noticing in the last couple of gazes, when I'm up in the morning and knowing I'm going to do a mirror gaze in the later part of the day, I start setting my intentions early and kind of send out gratitude and thanks for whatever I'm allowed to see. And what's started happening is that some of my impressions come through before I even sit down to do the gaze, things that are meant to come through this podcast, or that I'm meant to speak on. So I'm just going to try to follow that guidance. And so this morning when I was doing that work, it showed me a Moroccan agate that I purchased recently that's been cut into the shape of a heart and lightly tumbled so that it's got a little bit of polish to it. And it's just this beautiful Moroccan agate. It's a fairly large representative of an agate, so I hold it in my hand and it just feels super grounding, and I love it. And I felt like it called to me when I was in the store looking at stones. And I've just been really feeling like I was meant to come into an existence with this agate for some reason. So this morning, the agate really showed itself, and then it tied that to a Heart of the Sea seed pod that I featured in a pick a card reading I just did for this channel a couple days ago. So there might be a message in there for you if you're catching this around that Heart of the Sea layout that I did in my most recent pick a card. But the interesting thing that it kept showing me was that the Heart of the Sea sea pod, those are known to float on ocean currents for really extended periods of time before washing ashore, and they can still grow if they land in the right conditions, even after being adrift on the seas for long periods of time. And so it was showing me the Heart of the Sea floating on the surface of the water, and the heart of this Moroccan agate that I have sinking quietly through the depths of black water. And so what it was illustrating is the sort of sink float and the liminal space that the heart of the Moroccan agate is in and the Heart of the Sea are in, either floating or sinking. They're in a liminal space. They're in a transition time. They're on a journey. And it was showing me that time of transition and juxtaposing the floating of the Heart of the Sea and the sinking of the Moroccan heart agate that I have. Kind of simultaneous to that, I was sitting outside and having that image sort of come to my mind's eye. I felt a lot of sorrow in my heart. And I've been processing some personal sorrows, so there could be something to do with that, that's a message for me personally. But I think also what I was meant to share about that is that you might be feeling that level of sorrow and in that liminal space. And the sorrow is meant to be a part of this eclipse experience for us in some way, with that heart center being really emphasized, the liminal space that we're in the eclipse season energy, and then the despair and the sorrow that can come from saying goodbye from the old space that you were in before transitioning into the new. There's a card that comes through in Colette Baron Reid's deck called Between Worlds, and it has a flamingo at the center, kind of stepping between two worlds. That's what's really coming through very loudly in its quiet, unique way through this mirror gaze that I did. So then later on, again, still prior to doing this actual sitting down to scry into the obsidian mirror, I was on a walk along a little river locally where I live called the Coeman River. It's a really beautiful little river, and it has a lot of wildlife active in it because it's also a clean river. And if you sit there for a while, even though it's kind of in where I walk, it is in the center of a city populated area, because it's this kind of somewhat undisturbed part of the river, there's a lot of nature there, even right in the middle of the city. And if you sit in stillness for a while, you get to see a lot of really beautiful activity, especially among the birds. But I've seen a fox there before. I've seen a lot of wildlife there. So as I was sitting on that little walk this morning, the first thing I saw was, I heard it first. I heard a kingfisher. So I looked around for a while until I could spot the kingfisher. And then I actually got to watch the kingfisher plunge into the river after something. And it was really beautiful to see. And the kingfisher is also kind of a natural symbol of Zeus and the lightning bolt. There's a myth around the kingfisher bird and Greek mythology and Zeus and the lightning bolt. That's also a theme that's been carrying through some of these readings. So that was really lovely. The lightning bolt, the birth, lightning and water together are very like Mexica, Mayan, there's a lot of mythology around the lightning bolt and water and corn and creation. So that was sort of cool to see that kingfisher take that dive not very far away from me, and I got to watch him in action. Then as I was leaving that area and on foot walking away, I heard a ruckus a little bit behind me, and a hawk was just taking flight, and it had caught a snake. And it was flying off with the snake. And so if you know anything about the flag of Mexico, there's the story of the birth of how the Mexica people knew to build Tenochtitlan and Teotihuacan in that region of modern day Mexico City, was that somebody saw an eagle and a snake perched on a cactus, and it was considered a sign. So Mexico might have some meaning for you, or regardless, Mexico and that symbolism is coming through for me and meant to be mentioned here. Now I got home and then kind of got myself together and went down to do an outdoor scrying with the obsidian mirror. And now here picks up where I actually saw vision in the mirror itself. The first visions that came through were all of the stands of trees that grow in Indian Heaven Wilderness near the Gifford Pinchot National Forest, where I grew up in Washington State. There's a long history of people inhabiting that land, as well as Sasquatch inhabiting that land. That's kind of known Bigfoot country. Elk live out there. There's a lot of liminal space in that region. There's a lot of kind of land of the fae or fairy activity. There's a really amazing blog out there called Gathering the Stories. The person that writes that blog mentions that there's a lot of myth about, or not myth, myth implies that it's not true, but I use the word myth as reality. Some people don't consider myth to be based in reality, so I just want to name that. But that there's a lot of legend and lore in that area around kind of just unexplained fairy, supernatural, wildland spirits, things of that nature that take place in that region. So all of the tree stands that grow in that area came through for me, and the big, loud, again, message, loud in the quiet way of the obsidian mirror, was tree medicine. So the vibrant green of that area out there, along with the trees that grow out there in a way that you don't see them growing around because it's a wilderness space, right? So the trees that grow there, I'm going to name them because they all wanted to come through here and be represented. Pacific silver fir, noble firs, subalpine firs, mountain hemlock, grand fir, Engelmann spruce, western red cedar. Those are all fir trees, right? And in that family of evergreen trees. The stands of trees in Indian Heaven Wilderness have always struck me. They're very striking and beautiful. There are also just a lot of secrets in the mist in that region. So like you'll see a herd of elk there. And if you know anything about elk, they are like shapeshifters. And so you'll see elk and then they're like ghosts or just gone. It's a really magical place. So then, after seeing those trees come through and the lakes of Indian Heaven Wilderness, all of a sudden I saw kind of two mountains one inverted on the other, and the text that came with that was "as above, so below." So that's a alchemical, mystical kind of message that is just scratching the surface of what that all can mean to you if you're on a spiritual journey or a spiritual ascension process. As above, so below is a big spiritual truth that's out there in the ether. I'm not going to go too deeply into that, but it kept showing it over and over again. These mountains kind of inverted on itself, saying, or pyramids or triangle shapes. And it just kept saying, as above, so below. That was really surging through the mirror at that time. Then the 2 points of that sort of triangular imagery of the mountain or the chevron or whatnot, then there was suddenly that morphed into like a more flowing water-based organic shape, and it was showing me waves of light and waves of water, and the way that waves of light and water can shift to create like a hologram. And it was kind of almost showing me like the nature of the hologram that we live within. As above, so below. Light shifts and shimmers and perspective. That's been a theme that's coming through quite a bit. Next up was the letter M, as in man, and that letter M kept coming through and coming through and coming through. So the letter M might have a meaning to you. It was showing up in a different way than the chevron shape. So it was a separate message. It wasn't a part of those mountainous as above, so below messages. It was the letter M, as in man, or as in monster, or magic, right? There's something to do with the letter M that might have meaning for you. Then it went away from the green of the trees into a sparkling green light, like flickering, sparkling, lit up. Like it was one of the few sparkly light images that came through the mirror gaze. And it was really vibrant, sparkling green, shifting, really beautiful in the shape of a heart. So that's just straight up heart chakra energy, right? Like something about this energy through this time of the eclipse has to do with our heart, and the heart is just coming through over and over. The color of the heart, the sparkling, shimmering, shifting of the heart, the green of the trees, the green of nature being shown in Indian Heaven Wilderness and Sasquatch country. And like, these are magic places, like places of portals. There's all kinds of lakes in Indian country, or I'm sorry, in Indian Heaven. Also, that's Indian country. There's a long history of indigenous people, treaty tribes, and unrecognized indigenous people from this region that go in there to harvest medicine, to harvest huckleberries. There's an old racetrack in there. It's a very historic and sacred place. We're very lucky that we live so close to it here. So it kept showing me that sparkling green, the green of the trees there, the green in our heart center. Then it shifted to showing me a mountain goat. Mountain goats used to live in that area. They got hunted away and pushed back more towards the Goat Rocks, which bump up against Indian Heaven Wilderness. But it was showing me a mountain goat on a rock. And then it shifted into a ram, and that precarious position of a ram or a mountain goat on a cliffside, right? That's a liminal space in a way for them, but they're fine there. They don't mind being in those crazy, intense spaces. They're designed for it. So they are a creature that owns a liminal space like a mountainside, right? And it kept showing me the mountain goat went away after a time once I had recognized that it was showing me the mountain goats of Indian Heaven Wilderness that have gone into the past. I think one was spotted there about 10 years ago. I'm not sure if there are ever any that make it all the way into Indian Heaven and Silver Star Mountain region, but they used to live there. The ram, I think, is very specific for Aries and the total eclipse in Aries, but it was kind of showing me that relational, like there might be a mountain ram that's comfortable on those kind of cliff sides like mountain goats are. I'm not exactly sure. But in any case, he was also bright green, the ram and the mountain goat. They were sparkling green, really beautiful. And then one of the final images I saw before kind of closing it out was, this is going to seem random compared to the rest of it. I have no clue what it means, but it's going to have significance for someone, so I'm going to put it out there. It has some significance for me, but I don't understand why it would be coming up here. But it was showing me the loops of ribbons and bows, and the way that those ribbons and bows and chains are often shown in Hermes designs. It might be something to do with Hermes Trismegistus, right? Like Hermes is named after that. Hermes is a god, right? And so Hermes, the design house, is known for their scarves and those prints, and they have like, they're considered works of art, and people collect Hermes scarves, and I have an Hermes scarf, so that might be why it came through, is because it would be something that I knew what it meant and could then pass on the information, I guess. I don't know, but in any case, it kept showing me the loops and the chains and the ribbons of Hermes scarves and how they're shown in print over and over. And even in really effective design, you'll see their shadows and their three-dimensional form in a two-dimensional image of ribbons and chains in an Hermes scarf. And I'll try to just not really say anything more about it, because I honestly don't know why that was being shown at. But there was something about the harmonizing repetition of those prints, like the bow image. They're not all different kinds of bows, right? Like they're a repetition, almost like a wallpaper or a pattern or prints. And then that kind of came through now as I'm thinking about it, with those mountainous shapes and the chevron shape, as above, so below. There might be something to do with patterns, or patterns in nature mimicking patterns in the heavens, right? And then humans creating artistic images of those patterns that occur in nature in order to extend the power of those patterns. Maybe that might have something to do with it. So anyways, now I'm going to just pull a couple cards here to wrap up all of the scrying imagery, because that's where the scrying imagery ended. So I'll just pull now a couple tarot cards to tie that together for us. And then I'm going to go be in the outdoors again. I've got a flower essence out there in the sun for flowering red currant. And I have several native flower and plant essences that I keep here at home. So I'm just loving this time of year when I can do things like that. I was actually supposed to go to my employed job today, and I called in to do this kind of work instead. Helping my own heart's sadness. Because that was sort of the sorrow that came through at the very beginning of the scrying session, but just sorrow for the way that nature is so kind of really being exploited by people, and the sorrow that comes with that if you are a feeling person that's really connected to the natural world and the natural kingdom. It's really painful to look around. Like, I live somewhere where the symptoms of industry are just unavoidable. You can't help but see them everywhere, even though I live in a sacred place on the Columbia River. The Columbia River is a sacred river, right? Anyways. So the Ace of Swords came out here. So clarity of vision. Two of Swords. You're in a stillness, transmuting the wounds of the heart, the Five of Swords, and allowing your abundance and joy to return to you, or trying to attract that back in this liminal space. It's the Two of Swords, the Five of Swords, and the Queen of Pentacles. So you may be trying to sit and observe and be in stillness like me, like a Queen of Pentacles would be. The Queen of Pentacles is not out there grinding and pushing and chasing and all that. She's trying to be in stillness and allow things to come to her. In that stillness is a lot of sorrow being transmuted and processed in the stillness. And that came through this reading. Being willing to be in stillness. When you sit in stillness, nature reveals things to you that it won't reveal if you're not a still person, if you're not comfortable with stillness. So someone just walking that trail might not have never seen the things that I got to see by being willing to sit in stillness and feel that sorrow in my heart. And use my prayers in that moment to say, help me clear away the sorrow. I don't want to feel the sorrow of this planet anymore. I get really engulfed by it at times, like we all do, if you're a sensitive person. So just a couple more cards here, and then I'll close this out. Climb the burning ladder. So being willing to be in stillness through this time where you can allow kind of some sorrow to go, let it be healed, let the eclipse it out of your life. Climb the burning ladder, be willing to be in stillness through the rest of this eclipse energy, because after the eclipse energy, the next card here is show up in boots, ruin a black tie affair, friends in low places, which if you don't know, that's lyrics to a Garth Brooks song. And show up in boots, ruin a black tie affair means that we may be being called to stand for some of nature, right? This is not shocking. Many people do this. Water protectors, environmental activists, Greenpeace, people who love even sports and game people, right? Know that if we don't protect the environment, they're not going to be able to enjoy sports gaming anymore, right? Like not sports like organized sports, but like hunting and fishing I'm talking about, right? So finding ways to form coalition maybe after the eclipse resolves is going to be in play here. So with that, I think I'll close the scrying session. Go check out some of those readings, especially the pick a card reading, if you think there might be something more for you to follow up on with that Heart of the Sea imagery. And I'm thanking you so much for being here. I'll be back with the next scrying session will be to address the full moon total solar eclipse in Aries. And just thank you so much. I really appreciate it.